Hi, Kim.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. Thanks for asking. How are you doing?
Good. Other than, tech issues,
Mhm.
at work and just elsewhere, I've been good.
Fantastic. All right. After I put up the flyer for today, a lot of people showed interest in what you do and what you teach, and it's amazing because a lot of us don't really understand the power of negotiation and that we should be negotiating and really advocating for ourselves, advocating for our talent, our superpowers, and advocating for people also coming behind us. This week, I shared as a preamble to our session, I shared my story about, when I worked in an organization back in my home country, Nigeria, and that organization is owned by so they're not Nigerians.
Mm-hmm.
There was a base salary for everyone, but the
Yep.
thing is, the base salary was only for Nigerians, right? So people who were Nigerian,
Yep.
different skin color, and all that. So regardless of your um, degree or years of experience, everyone was paid a base salary. And
Mm-hmm.
when I got into that organization, I negotiated my salary upwards. And doing that, I was able to advocate for other Nigerians in that company because they increased salary of everybody as well. So sometimes when you're negotiating, not just for yourself, but you never know, right? Just also just telling that organization that I'm worth this, I can do it.
Yeah, definitely.
People coming behind you are like, wow, if she could do it, I can do it too.
Yep.
So that's my preamble into negotiating and advocating for yourself.
Yes.
So
Yes.
let's get to meet Kim. Who is Kim Tran?
First off, let me tell you that I am in marketing. And so I'm so used to being behind the scenes with
Mm.
video shoots, with photo shoots, campaigns. And so I am pushing myself out of my comfort zone and being in front of the camera. So let me
Yeah.
just say that first. But yeah, so hi, everybody. My name is Kim Tran. Just a fun fact is that I was actually born and raised in Canada. So I moved here in 2000. So I've officially
Wow.
lived for longer in the US now, but
Mm.
I will always be a Canadian at heart. So I actually graduated. Wow, I'm not going to date myself, but I did graduate in the last financial recession. And so obviously nothing compared to this pandemic, right? Like this
Mm.
pandemic is a situation of its own. Like 2020 has been like a crazy year. And
Mm.
that's like underestimating and talking about it, right? But
Yeah.
when I graduated, it was obviously the financial recession. A lot of the big banks went, bankrupt, and they needed
Mm.
government assistance and
Yeah.
bailouts and all of that, right? And so, needless to say, it was a very crappy time to be a newly graduate. And not only that, I graduated with a quote unquote useless degree, psychology. Right, my parents were like, what are you going to do with a psychology degree?
Mm.
They expected three things of me: either go into engineering like my aunts and uncles, or go into law as my other relatives, or become a doctor. Which I could never be a doctor, let me just say, because I start laughing when I see blood. So that is not a good thing. But so I started off my career in law because I had decent writing skills. What else was I going to do? And
Mm.
that summer, I interned at a family law firm, found that I actually cared so much about the clients that I was getting very exhausted. And I just kept, hustling. I was a Vietnamese interpreter for the county's public school system. I was
Mm.
doing odd end jobs, just to pass by. I was also living with my parents because I had student loans to pay.
Mm.
But I was so focused on what I thought was my path, and that was becoming a lawyer. And my very first job offer after all these interviews, right, was for a trademark specialist role at a mid-size intellectual property and copyright law firm. And they offered me $35,000 a year. Mind you, that was $35,000 was less than my student loans at the time. Okay. I owed much more in student loans than I was getting paid. And I I was very grateful to get that offer, right? Especially in the recession, and especially because I was a brand new graduate with very limited legal experience. So I responded to the recruiter and I said, "Hi, thank you so much for my offer. However, $35,000 is a little lower than I expected. Can we go higher at 40,000?" And their response to me was so baffling. Their response was no, a hard no. But not only that, they pushed up my decision making period to less than 24 hours. And once they did that, I was one, that was not okay because that is bullying. And two, I wasn't even an employee yet, and they treated me that way. And so I actually turned down my offer. And people, when I told people that, they were just like, again, they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's the recession. Where else are you gonna get an offer?" My parents were livid. They're like, "You can't just say no to an offer like that."
Right.
But again, it was just like, it wasn't the fact that I was too good for $35,000. It was the fact that this potential employer did not even value me enough to work with me, to see where we can land, to have that conversation with me. And not only that, but actually strong arming me into a decision. And so I share that story because a lot of times, and especially culturally, I come from an immigrant family. I come from a refugee family, right? And I'm the only daughter in my family. I have three younger brothers. And as a woman of color, I've been conditioned with certain beliefs about life, right? One, be grateful for what you're given.
Exactly.
Two, don't question anything. Don't ask. Don't, cause trouble, right?
Yeah.
And then three is, I've always been told to do certain things and to follow certain path. And again, it goes back to, just never questioning what was good for me, right? And so after that, when I turned down that first offer, where I ended up next was a law firm in media litigation and First Amendment law. And it was such a cool place to start off my career after college. We were in downtown DC. Some of my closest friends and my closest mentors that I still keep in touch with over a decade now really started from there. But it was also there that I realized that I didn't want to become a lawyer anymore, because one, my personality just didn't fit with the environment, with the setting. Two is that nobody was happy. Everybody was, like 95% of the lawyers told me, do not go to law school. They were unhappy. They were so stressed out. And me, personality wise, I value learning, I value change, I value innovation. And as you probably know, laws take a very long time to change around here.
Right.
So, all of that, I just had those realizations. And I shared those realizations and those goals with my manager at the time, with my partners, and where I ended up was going to grad school for strategic communications. And then because I had built a lot of great relationships, but also because I had started pitching in with client events, with business development, with marketing proposals, that's where I love marketing, and I wanted to do that full time. And because of my reputation and because of the value that I had created for myself, as
Yeah.
well as the firm, because I was representing the firm, I actually jumped over to one of our clients at the time, which is Discovery Communications, otherwise known as the Discovery Channel. And I was there for about almost 3 years, and they paid for my school. They finished up, the tuition reimbursement. And as they say, my global marketing experience really grew from there. But I want to encourage and remind people who may or may not be going through, a time of change right now, that it takes time, and take the time to figure out things for yourself, figure out your values, and figure out, what your superpower is. And I actually use that word on my LinkedIn profile. I say this is my superpower. And it has resonated with people so much because, one, it helps me weed out companies that may or may not, be off put by that kind of term, right? But it also attracts and magnetizes companies and recruiters and hiring managers who actually share those values as well. And so one of the big mistakes that I see is that, people tend to manually exhaust themselves job searching and applying, right? But just like marketing and branding, you yourself are your own brand. You yourself have your own reputation. And so how do you magnetize that and automate it, right? And draw opportunities to yourself through a series or a variety of factors, if you will. I'm going to take a sip of my water now.
Of course. Absolutely.
But so it's been about 6 years now that I've graduated with my master's. I have gone through a lot of change. Currently, I work for an internet company in the domain name industry, which is such a niche industry, but domain name is literally like .com, .net, whatever. And I manage a specific domain name in the Latin America region. And so I oversee marketing initiatives, campaigns, sponsorships, events, and things like that. And I don't speak the language. And what I often get, questions is, Kim, how did you get this job? How did you negotiate for this job? And how are you even able to get in front of recruiters and hiring managers for this job? Because let me tell you, I didn't even think I was qualified for it, right? And that's something that is so conditioned with women, is that we feel like we need to 100% or even 150% meet all of the qualifications, right? Before we even put ourselves out there.
Sure.
And I was actually all set to go to another company at the time. I was in Hawaii learning how to surf and meditate. and when the recruiter reached out to me, I was like, Allie, are you sure this is the right job description? First of all, I don't even have 10 years of management experience. I don't speak Portuguese. I barely speak Spanish. I have zero industry experience. And she goes, no, this is exactly the job description. And I know the team. I know that they will love you. Your values and your performance and what you're known for is exactly the type of person that they need. So someone who pushes the envelope, someone who isn't afraid to, follow or explore new ideas and going into new markets and things like that. And again, that goes back to that theme of building out your brand and what you're known for and your reputation. And they also loved my LinkedIn, because on my LinkedIn, not only do I use the word superpower, but I say that I love puns. And anyone who has worked with me will make fun of my love for puns. I love bad puns and I love bad mom jokes or dad jokes. So it's on my LinkedIn. And when I did meet the team, they are the best team. Love my manager, love my teammates, and we all get along so well because not only, from a professional perspective, they respect my talents and my values, but they also respect me as a person and as an individual, right? And so that is very important as well, because if someone doesn't like you, there's you can try and negotiate as much as you want, but they will go with the person that is easy to collaborate with, or people who they can relate with. That's another negotiation mistake that women, especially just like minorities in general, we tend to be, we've been taught certain things about asking, right? And that's another thing I hate about that word. Asking implies permission. Okay, we are not asking for permission to get paid fairly. We are negotiating, we're advocating for it, we're setting an expectation, but we are not asking for permission. And that's something that I'm very clear about when clients come to me with certain, whatever goal or whatever outcome they want to do. I actually coach them on a lot of the language and the self-talk that they use with themselves.
Fantastic. Language. So when you're negotiating, you should use certain language, certain words. There's some things you shouldn't say, so it doesn't seem like you're begging, right?
Yes. Begging. There's so much power in walking away. I think the worst thing that anybody can do for themselves is thinking that they need to take the offer simply because it's available, right? And let me tell you, with that very first offer, I struggled so much about walking away or not, because I was in a position to, say, like, I was jobless. It was the recession. There were so many factors where I should have taken it. And of course, there's also the part where I am privileged. I had support from my family to live with. I was able to work a lot of side hustles to pay off my my student loans that started kicking in, right? I took out credit cards, loan and debt during college because, again, I didn't come from a very wealthy family. I didn't come from a wealthy family at all. And so for me, it was just, but there was a voice inside of me that said that if I took this job, it would cost me more. My mental health would have cost so much more than $35,000, and it's worth more than $35,000. And for me, it is a privileged thing to say, because not a lot of people can have the luxury to turn down a job, right? But that is also the power of negotiations, is when you think about negotiations, we've been almost like primed, or as an example, I was curious the other day and I Googled negotiator on Google Images, and all of the pictures that showed up were people in suits and, often like white men and sitting around corporate offices. And that is so intimidating, and second of all, not true at all. And so, of course, people would not identify themselves as a negotiator, right? But we negotiate in every aspect of our lives, not just salary. As a marketer, as an employee, as a hiring manager, I negotiate budget for my marketing campaigns. I negotiate resources. I negotiate deadlines. I negotiate, talent, things like that. And at the core, negotiation is a collaboration, right? It's a conversation with a goal or an outcome that you want the best for for both sides. And so once I had that realization for myself
Yeah.
that I did not need to be aggressive, I did not need to be someone I wasn't to negotiate
Mm.
effectively, that was something that was like a breakthrough for me mentally, because there's so much mental and psychological blocks in negotiations that I've realized, especially with women where and minorities, right? Growing
Mm.
up, I was taught to save my money and to accept money when it was given, but I was never taught to make more money, to ask for
Mm.
more money, to negotiate for more, to get more, to, yes, the immigrant experience is all about being entrepreneurial and things like that, but that was my experience, and some people may have had different experiences. So
Right.
it's just something that I had to reflect on. And there were a lot of psychological mental blocks. And it started with my self talk, it started with the language that I was using with myself, right? So, for example, my current job, when the recruiter sent me the job description, I said, Allie, is this the right job description? I'm not even qualified. I don't have this. I don't have that. And
Mm.
she self-checked me. She was like, okay, first off, girl, like, it doesn't matter about whether or not you don't have these things, because you have these other things
Thing. Yeah.
that are actually even more important to the hiring team.
Right.
And knowing that, one, made me feel more powerful, but
Mm.
then two, it again reminded me of the strengths that I bring and the values that I bring,
Right.
and the alignment that between what I bring to the table versus what the
Right.
company is looking for. And
Mm.
that is something that I find that a lot of people miss during their negotiation conversations, where, they're trying so hard to make something happen or a deal happen that they totally miss the point that the company may or may not actually value that strength or
Mm.
value that specific experience, right? And so for me, it's almost like a puzzle. Is this person going to value my leadership skills or my innovation skills or my tendency to ask a lot of questions, right?
Right. Right.
And some corporate cultures, I'm not going to, again, like you say, beg someone to prioritize those values for me if that's not who they are, if that's
Yeah.
not what they're about, right? And so all of that is really having those conversations from the very first interaction. Your
Mm.
negotiation and the negotiation process starts the very first conversation that you have with a member of the hiring team. It's not when an offer is given to you, it's
Mm.
when everything, the whole process.
Right.
And that's something that I want more people to think about, because they think, okay, now it's time to negotiate. No,
Mm.
because the negotiation or the perception of how much you're worth and how much you're valued and how much value you can bring has
Yeah.
already started 3 4 conversations ago. And now it's about, it's like what they say, right? Sorry, I'm going to make an election analogy. It's like what they say. It's, you're wasting time trying to make people change their minds, rather than trying to understand where they're coming from, right? And it's the same thing in negotiations, because at the core is a communication process. And it's about positioning yourself to your best ability, but also to what the company is also looking for. And it's like dating, you don't
Mm.
want to beg someone to love you or to be with you, right?
Right.
Why are you doing that with a company? And a company is not going to pay you for your project management skills, for example, if what they value is actually a team building skill, right? And so again, it's like, again, thinking through what they're looking for and what you are looking for, and finding that win-win outcome,
Oh.
um, and walking away if that outcome does not happen, or is not possible. And that's something that I have certainly done. It's something that I have encouraged other clients to do as well. But it's not always about walking away as well, because I feel like growing up, I got no a lot as, an answer, right? And mostly from my parents. So that is why I do not like the word asking for more, because again, it reminds me of asking my parents, right? Like, a company is not your parent. Like, they are your partners, they're your employer. It's a partnership, right?
Right.
They're getting something out of you and you're giving something back, and vice versa, right? And so that's the first thing. The second thing is that when someone says no as a kid, obviously, like, it triggers something, right? Like, you're like, okay, end of the conversation, I'm gonna go do something else now. But in the corporate world, for me, what I've learned is no is usually three things. Not this person, as in this person has no power to say yes. Two, no probably means not yet, or not the right timing. So if you are, asking for a raise, for example, then, maybe it's like the budgets have already been set for next year. And that's the other thing too, is that people think year end conversation or their evaluation at year end is the time to talk about raises. It's like, no, that, again, going back to that first conversation and negotiations process, right? That conversation should have happened at least 3 months ago, and you build towards it and you close the deal, right? And then three is not this person. Again, that person doesn't have the power to say yes. The timing is likely not the right time. And three, maybe it's just not the right number or the right mix of compensation. Yes, I have a number in mind. I always have three numbers in mind. My like sky high dream salary for any job, right? My middle of the line, I would be happy with this salary if once we negotiate. And then the third number is anything lower than this, and I will walk away. And that keeps me honest with myself, and it keeps me respectful of my own self to give myself a number and to not accept anything less than that. Because if you don't have that anchor, if you don't have that standard for yourself, you may or may not be, influenced by your emotions or whatever else, right? Or desperation or a recession, and to just say, take it. And in some cases, again, I do feel privileged because I have that luxury to say no, right? And it's okay to take a job and then leave for another job if you.
Oh yeah.
Like, for me, again, like, loyalty is something that I grew up with, right? And that's fine, that's great. But think about it, like, no companies, they will be
loyal to you.
Yes, exactly. And it's just like, I'm going to be very diplomatic about it and not be like completely candid. But I have been laid off before where, 6 years ago, actually, in 2000, actually 2 weeks into 2015, January 14, 2015, I remember this because I got laid off and I knew it was coming. I had been interviewing. I had a team at the time, so I was giving them our work. But the campaigns package that I was overseeing, 3-month campaigns, 3-month offers, clients, consulting clients, things like that, was getting eliminated. And that's like the writing on the wall, right? So 2 weeks into January, after the third round of restructurings, I got laid off as well. But because I had already started conversations, and because I had provided myself with the three numbers that I had in mind, my next job, I actually got $10,000 more because, one, I did not use my layoff as a desperation point, right? Layoffs happen, especially this year in COVID. People understand. Of course, when it's an actual performance issue, then that's a different story. But
Right.
for me, I think the biggest mistake that I wish I knew to do back then was actually give myself more time to grieve.
Mm.
Um, I spent my first day after the layoff sitting on my couch in a onesie and drinking a bottle of Heineken. And I just that was my time to heal, but I wish I gave myself more time,
Right.
because I do feel like I would have built up more confidence. I
Mm.
am happy with how I obviously, netted out. $10,000 was at the time a huge bump for me.
Mm.
But looking back, if I had given myself more time to grieve, I would have been much more confident with myself. And that was 6 years
Mm.
ago.
Mm.
Um, and, for me, it's just there's a lot of psychology and emotional factors that come
Mm.
into negotiations. When clients first come to me, a lot of them are operating from a place of frustration. They feel ashamed. For example, one woman, again, I think she was a finance manager, so she's comfortable working with numbers, right? But she had not negotiated successfully, and she kept saying, oh God, I feel so stupid, I feel so dumb, and I should have known
Mm.
better. And I listened to her, but it was just like after 5-10 minutes, I was like, girl, stop. Stop it right now, because you will take that energy and you will be taking that sort of language and
Mm.
projection into your conversations if you keep having those feelings, right?
Right.
Another woman had been with her firm for over 10 years, and she still had the same title. She had tried to negotiate raises, she had tuition reimbursement and things like that. And I was listening to her, share her situation so that we can move forward. And I asked her one very simple question: is that what you want? That's great, but is that what you want?
Want, yeah.
And she was just like, you know what? I never asked myself that. Like, is that what I really want? And no, actually, that's
Mm.
not what I want. And having
Right.
that clarity can then start eliminating, but also focusing your options moving forward even more, right? And
Mm.
that's what negotiation is. You enter a conversation with so much options, so much possibility, right? But then you start asking questions, you start eliminating options. Okay, well, if you can't give me $50,000,
Mm.
then what else? What else can you give me? Or what else can we do, or can you do to get me to that place, right?
Mm.
And this is how my biggest win for a client recently was literally creating more income potential for her after her contract has ended. When she first came to me, she had a 6-month contract for 10% commission rate.
Mm.
And she was she was 40 something years old. She had been in nonprofit for a very long time. And she said, I had never negotiated successfully. The one time I negotiated successfully, I got a 3% raise after like 6 years with being with the
Wow.
company, and I
Wow.
was I was so mad, right? And for me, it's like, girl, I'm mad for you, you know.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, regardless of whatever happened in the past, let's focus on what we can do moving forward, right?
Right.
And so she was telling me, okay, so giving me, telling me her situation in her own words. And for me, like, I feel like part of my job as a negotiations coach is also being a psychologist in a way, because like you have to get all those emotions out, right? You
Yeah.
cannot make clear decisions and you cannot communicate clearly if
Right.
you are in like if you're like raging mad or if you're
Mm.
upset, right? Because then the other party that you're negotiating with will project those same feelings, right? Like they're gonna be like, well, if you're mad, I'm gonna be mad too, you know?
Right.
Or like if you're being rude, I'm being rude as well.
Right.
And it's very psychological, we
Mm.
mirror people's behaviors. We mirror each other's feelings. And so I bring a lot of that into my coaching. And so let's call her S. She had the proposal and I coached her through, how to get counter while still staying genuine to herself, right? A lot of the negotiations training out there, and I only know this because I worked with lawyers, right? And I had access to these resources. And negotiations training can range from $3,000 to $5,000 for like a week or two of training. Like, that is insane, first of all. Great for them to charge that much, right? But for women and minority women, especially, who may or may not have that access to begin with, like, how do we access those skills to get more money when we're already making less money to begin with?
Exactly.
And so for me, it's like, that is what fuels me to make it relatable, but also practical, because a lot of these negotiations training have historically been only available to, very privileged demographics or status, right? And or they're very academic in nature, or they're like talking about like negotiating multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar global deals. Like you and I, we may or may not, ever have that in our professional life, but we need it for everyday life, right? And so how do we make that more accessible and relatable? And so, sorry, I tend to go off on tangents because I get so passionate about this. But going back to S, I wanted, my goal for her was, one, not for me to tell her what to do. That's never my goal for anybody. My goal is literally to teach someone so that they can replicate and understand the reasoning behind a certain action so that they can do that again for themselves without my help in any situation, right? And so with us, I said, okay, well, you're telling me that you're getting a 6-month contract at 10% commission rate. However, as this pandemic has shown us, you don't know where this company is going to be in 6 months. First of all. Second of all, you have so much experience and you should be very confident that you would be getting these results for this company within the first 90 days or within 3 months. And so how do we start thinking about that? 10% commission rate at 6 months feels not worth it to me. So that's the first thing. Okay. It's not representative of the value that you will be bringing to this company. And so what ended up happening was I encouraged her to go back to the hiring manager and say, hey, if I get this X amount of people in by 3 months, then my commission rate should increase. And so, of course, what ended up happening was that she ended up getting a commission rate after 90 days to increase to 15%. That's a 50% rate, okay? Not only that, we also dug into her strengths and her superpowers, and that was relationship building in nonprofit. That was her ability to get people to stay. And she was also in a membership type of role. And so building those long-time relationships, right? Like that is such a, people never think about the actual value of relationships, right? We're not taught to quantify things like that. We spend our lives, building up our skills and experiences, and we know all these people, but how do we actually put an amount of dollar or worth or value on those skills and experiences? We're never trained to do that. And so I said, okay, go back to them and say, this is my superpower, and it's to build long-time relationships. It's not just to build a relationship for just a year. it's to build a relationship, or even 6 months, right?
Mhm.
It's for me to build long time relationships that benefit the companies that I have served and worked for.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening, I was, oh my gosh, I wanted to cry when she shared with me her results. Was that not only did her commission rate increase to 15% after 3 months, um, but she also got 10 extra percent total in commission rate that
Well,
didn't even exist in her offer to begin with, right? And that was based on whether or not someone would renew their membership or
mhm.
bought another membership,
Wow.
as a result of them coming into the company.
Yeah.
And I share this because we tend to be very short term in terms of negotiations. We think about it just in terms of salary, right? And so I make a six-figure salary. However, and this is something that I have learned in my first job out at a law firm. Partners don't become millionaires because they're working, 800 hours of
Mhm.
billable
Right.
hours, right? They make money because they brought in clients. They
Mhm.
make money because they get a cut of those clients, regardless of whoever works on that client case.
Yeah.
And for me, whenever I look at a company, I look at one, their health, right? Stocks, equity. How do I get a piece of that company even after I've left,
Right.
right? I left Discovery a long time ago. I still have stocks with them, and that is money that is growing. That is
Right.
something that, I still have regardless of whether I'm an employee or not.
Mm.
Um, my current company, they offered me $17,000 dollars worth of stocks when they first made an offer, and I also had a separate second offer, and thinking through it and things like that, and I went back to them and I said, you know what, $17,000 is unfortunately just not worth it to me. What can you do? How much higher can you go? And they came back with, okay, well, what about $27,000 in stocks?
Mm.
And I'm in the tech and internet company, okay? Like, the internet's not gonna go anywhere. So
Of
for
course.
me, sure, after I leave, great. Those are my stocks, I
Right.
own
Right.
them. And when I got that email, claim your stocks, Kim, like, that's something that came out because I negotiated, not from a place of, because you can't meet my salary, but from a place of what else can you offer me to get me to that number that is worth it to me?
Right.
What else can we work out together?
Mm.
What else can we collaborate on? And, for me, but the thing is, like, if you don't have that mindset of collaborating and having that win-win outcome to begin with, you're not going to get there. Someone else would have been like, oh, you can't make that salary? Okay, well, then we'll just take it, or they'll be like, okay, well, I'll just walk away. Or whatever, but for me, those are my values. Those were my priorities. And
Right.
those are the things that I encourage people to think about when they negotiate as well. And so when S reached out with her results and telling me, like, in her own words, she was like, I'm on top of the world. I was on top of the world for her. Like, I wanted to
Right.
cry. I was just like, girl, you are like, you spent all this time, like, I wish I knew you earlier so that I could help you get more. Imagine if you had gotten more when you were
Right.
20 or 30 or whatever. And people don't realize that when they don't negotiate for something now, today, they are literally missing out on money. They are leaving money
On the
um,
table.
just floating out there for someone else to take up,
Right.
and
And another thing is
unfortunately,
that the truth is, especially when you're about to, start a job, right, and they give you an offer, it's an
mhm,
offer that can always be adjusted, right? It's not final. That's what
yes,
you have in mind, and also knowing that that is the only time that you can actually stand up for yourself and say, this is what I'm worth right now.
yes,
Because if you hope that maybe during my next performance review I can ask for more, that won't come.
yes,
uh, you know um, The company may have policies that maybe you need to have been in the role for 2 years or 3 years
Yep.
before you can get promoted. And even if you get a raise, maybe it's like a 5% raise of maybe like, you know, 2K or 5K. That's not worth
Mhm.
what you should have done when you were getting in. Like grab everything that you can. And
Yep.
something I'm going to ask you, and once you're done with what you're going to say, is a lot of us just focus on the salary, which is like the base, but we forget the whole compensation package. There's a lot of other things we can ask for,
Absolutely.
right?
And
And
that's
that
the thing.
total
Your
into the
base
package.
salary is
Yeah.
the base, right? That's a starting point. And for me, people think, oh well, $1,000, $5,000 may or may not be worth it. But over the course of your lifetime, again, compounded, right? Like in some cases, for example, I now have been in roles now where my annual performance bonus or my company corporate bonuses is actually a percentage of my base salary. So if my
Exactly.
base salary isn't higher, then that bonus compensation is not going to be higher either. So
Right.
it's like a ripple effect that people
Mhm.
don't think about, right?
Yeah.
401k. If you don't make more money, you don't have more money to save for your retirement. You can't save more if, it's great to save money, but it's also very important to increase your income so that you have more to save,
Save. Right.
right?
Right.
And
Right.
I love that you bring up that, negotiation before you get into the role is so important. And it is because you are negotiating on potential. Everybody loves potential, right? When we
Right.
first date, we're like, "Ooh, yeah, that guy
Mhm.
has a lot of potential." You're excited. You're all these positive emotions are happening, and it can happen that once you are in the role, you can negotiate more. And I've certainly been in those roles. And but the thing is, now you're negotiating based on performance,
Right.
right? And if you did not perform according to those expectations to get that raise, to get that promotion, that's not going to happen,
Right.
And the other piece is that I think for negotiations as well is that, again, because you are already in that position, you need to gather other people to help you um, get that raise or get that promotion. In my last job, I got promoted within 10 months, and I was with a big Fortune 500 company. They definitely had caps.
Mm.
But again, I started to have that like conversation with other people. I
Oh.
started to, plant that seed like
Mm.
6 months into my job, right? I'm like, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And, I want to be in that VP presentation. Can I present, And suddenly that
Mm.
VP who will sign off on whether or not I get my raise or my promotion, he needs to know who I am,
Right.
right? He needs to know what I'm working on. And
Mm.
so that's the other thing is that I've been raised to keep my head down, don't make waves, don't make trouble,
Don't be
right? Like
visible.
just do your job and go home, right?
Right.
And so it's something that I still have to actively work on, especially in this environment of COVID where everybody's home, right? How do we still stay visible within our organization, and how do we keep growing? And so when I was in financial services, I mean, again, my values was that I love learning and I love being innovative, right? And so I pitched in and I voiced it again to my managers, to my partners, and I was like, I want to work on that project. Events is fun. My first event was actually a golf tournament out in Dallas, and
Mm.
yeah, that's fun and all. But I want to work on the Capital One cafes. What is that all about?
Yeah. Right.
That's something that no one has ever done before. I want to work on that, and having more influence in your organization is always going to be a great thing because
Mm.
that is when you build your relationships, right? And those relationships will then be your amplifiers and your promoters and not club promoters, okay? Promoters. Promoters, so that when it comes time to securing that bag, it's not
Mm.
just you asking, it's everybody else, directors, managers, peers, whoever, people they don't even know who know you. They're like, oh yeah, that person, oh yeah, they need to be compensated.
Yeah,
Oh
she's
yeah, that person, I
yeah,
loved working with them. Let's get them more money.
right.
And that is something that, again, women tend to stick to our roles and do it very, very well,
Mm.
right? Because we're afraid to fail or whatever. I certainly am a perfectionist. I joke that I'm a recovering perfectionist. But for me, I've really had to have that mental reset where I'm like, okay, progress, not perfection, right?
Right,
And a growth mindset and a learning mindset
right,
aligns with my values. And
right.
so whenever there's a new project, whenever there's like chaos, right? Like this entire year, one of my projects, um, I manage Latin America. I'm part of the Americas team,
Right.
and we had a project that was Americas based.
Mm.
And with COVID happening, suddenly, you know, everything went down the gutter, right? People were like,
Right.
oh, well, it's not worth it anymore.
Mhm.
But then I was like, you know what? What if this project benefited other teams around the world? Um,
Mhm.
and suddenly my VP, my senior
Right.
VP, my director's like, oh, you know what? We're already doing this project. Like, why not benefit other people? And so suddenly I got my scope got larger
Right.
laterally and broader, right? Now I'm being exposed to my China teams, my India team, my Indonesia team. Not always great because I'm on calls at like 8 a.m.
Right.
Um, but um, but now I'm actually more visible to not only my leadership but other peers.
Right.
And for me, it aligns with my personal value of wanting to connect with other people, of not having just an America based perspective, right?
Mm.
And keeping on learning.
Right.
Marketing in China, for example, is so different from marketing in Brazil and Mexico, which is my region right now. I have a campaign going on in Mexico, and I don't speak the language, but I rely on my agency team there. And for me, I check my assumptions, right? These are all skills that then I learn to then apply into my negotiations. Don't
Mhm.
assume that someone doesn't have budget. I actually,
Mhm.
2 months into my campaign, because of the performance of the campaign, I got more incremental budget, you know? So again, your negotiating isn't just for your salary, but negotiating will then have a ripple effect for others.
Right.
When people learn that I, this is not great, but I have a coworker who is much older than me. She's been with the company for 5 years now. She did not know that we could negotiate for stocks. And for me,
Mhm.
it's like, I'm not sharing this to make you feel bad, girl. I'm sharing so that you can go to your manager
Yours.
and get yours too. I'm like,
I
you've
like
been
that.
with this company for 5 years.
Uh,
The company's stock has grown 200% in the last 5 years.
I
That
learned
is
that lesson
money
too.
that you could
Other
have
people.
had.
Mhm.
And for me, it's like, it's like it's being transparent, right? And knowing that if it's possible for this person, like, girl, I it's like, that meme or that quote, like, just start, just do it, because
Right.
people who are less talented than you, less knowledgeable than you are doing it. That's
Doing
me.
it.
I'm less talented than you. I'm less knowledgeable than you. I'm not an engineer.
Right.
But I am also learning from others, where a friend of mine, she works for a big bank. I mean, like, big. She's a VP there. And she she was pregnant when she was negotiating. And
Mm.
because she knew she was going to be out on maternity leave, she negotiated the amount of compensation from that maternity leave to then get paid out before she even joined the company. That is a boss ass move, okay? And I was
Mhm.
like, I need to remember that for my clients. I don't plan on having any other kids. I only have one. I'm one and done. But that is something that, again, like, negotiations, again, is like a conversation of exploration, right?
Mhm.
And I want more women, especially more women of color, to have that possibility within themselves to think about negotiations from that perspective,
Right.
rather than I just need to get more money and I need to close that deal, because it's not always the case
Yeah.
and it doesn't always end well. There's been a lot of research studies that actually have documented that a lot of hiring managers or hiring teams or corporate cultures actually feel biased towards women or minorities when they do negotiate, right? And
Mm.
so there's that, like, awareness too that you need to be in mind, to keep in mind.
Right.
But those are all things that through Your Work Inspires, I really try to address, because, again, it's not just a numbers game. It's an emotions game. It's a psychology game. It's a
Mm.
strategy game. Like,
Right.
people enter negotiations with no strategy, and they're very reactive. And a woman shared with me that she feels like she's often on the quote unquote losing end of a negotiation.
Mm.
And for me, this is one thing that I learned about one of my mentors when I was at Discovery,
Yeah.
where it's never a win or lose situation. It's either a win-win situation or a you learn situation. And that perspective just, like, made it less intimidating for me when I negotiate. And it also made me more gentle with myself, where, okay, what can I learn from this?
Right.
And when I turned down that offer of $35,000, right, I learned that I am not okay with people bullying me.
Right.
I should never be okay with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like more lessons and more
Right.
learnings,
Right.
and that builds confidence. The more you learn, the more you know, and the more you know, the more you can do better, right?
Right.
And that will build your power and confidence when you do step into the next negotiation, rather than telling yourself, I feel stupid because I didn't negotiate. Well, you're just, if you think that, you're going to keep thinking that. What did you learn?
So I ask you this question: should we always negotiate when we have an offer? Should we always? So what
You
if that
should.
that offer came in at my, oh well, this is one of my numbers, right? Still
Yes.
negotiate.
So that's the thing too, is that people will say, okay, well, I want, $125,000, whatever. And the company's like, okay, here it is. And it's like, shit, well, what do I do then?
Mhm.
Okay. And that's the thing, right? It's human to want more. It's human to want to get greedy, right? And for me, it's like, if that's what you wanted, then take it.
Mm.
However, have that conversation. Again, like, what are the benefits? I never throw out a number unless I am very confident that it's like a crazy high number, right?
Yeah.
And I have done that before. But that's also because I've researched that number. The worst that anybody can do is like, I'm worth 150,000 and, like, with no receipts, right? Nothing to back it up. Like, okay, where are you getting 150,000? I mean, I would love to, like,
Right.
it's just like, okay, let's
When people tell me that, I'm like, why should any company pay you 150? That's what you want. Fantastic. No problems. But why should any company pay
yes,
that right now? What do you
exactly.
bring to the table? And that's, something you said about the conversation starts before you get the offer and start negotiating, because it's how you're communicating your value. From your first conversation with the recruiter to the hiring manager for your interview, the things
Yep.
you say, how you position yourself, how you brand yourself,
Mm-hmm.
always play a role in, and it builds up, to the point where, oh, you know what, we've been talking to Kim, but we're actually looking at intermediate level for her. But right now, we think we're gonna, upgrade her to senior level and take her to a level 8 and give her,
Yep.
a salary in the level 8 band instead of level 6 or something, right?
Yep.
How you position yourself, how you communicate your value, and it starts with everything you said, like building your brand. How you
Yep.
show up, how do you communicate it? Do you talk about your wins in such a way that it's not exciting? It's not doesn't look like you've done anything great.
Yep.
We tend to undermine our achievements and the great things that we've done, the projects we've worked on. I mean, you've talked about a lot of the projects you've worked on, and it sounds so interesting, and you even being able to say that you were able to extend your project into other regions, you're able to increase your budget for your project based on the results you were getting. Imagine saying that in an interview, and I'm the hiring manager. I'm like, wow, she's a star,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I'm like, when you ask me for whatever, I'm like, I want to keep her, so I want to make sure I give her everything. I'm giving
Yep.
her salary. I'm giving her, sign up bonus. I'm giving her stocks. I'm giving her
Give me all the things.
401k
Give me
and
all the things.
pension. I'm paying, does she want to go to school? I'm paying for her studies, like all these things, tuition reimbursement. Like there's so many things that we can monetize that we can
Yep.
get from our organizations, right?
Yep.
And we don't put this on the table
Yep.
when we're negotiating.
Yep.
So
And that's the other thing too, is that people get so trapped again, like having that perspective of exploring what is possible is so important at the beginning, because then you're not just, anchoring to a base salary, right? When you say, okay, well, I want 125,000. All right, well, here you go. And then suddenly it's the end of the conversation. Like, no, like I actually start off with people love telling you about themselves, right? like it's just human nature, it's like people are curious, right? And that is why negotiations should always start from a point of exploration and what is possible, what can you do, what else can you offer, right? And so when I was interviewing, I was all set to go from a financial services company to another financial services company. And one, I think they were offering me 125,000 base, but going into that conversation, I said, okay, well, honestly, like I would have to travel into Vienna and like all of these things, right? And I said, is there a transportation reimbursement program? Is there a bonus structure? Is there, what is your annual performance like? What am I, what is the raise like? If I don't use up my PTO, do I get paid out for it?
right.
Like things like that.
Yeah.
Like, explore what is possible.
It's possible. So many options that we just leave.
Exactly.
Sometimes the organization may not be able to increase your base salary, but once you're able to get it to somewhere you're comfortable with, then ask for other things, other benefits.
Exactly.
Right? If you want to start school, you want to get your MBA, they pay 40 grand for your MBA, that's 40 grand plus your base salary.
Yep.
Right? If you get them to just like you said, pay you out for time, travel, all that stuff. You can also monetize all those things.
Yep. And so one fun thing that I always ask in all of my interviews, because traveling, obviously with COVID, it's not happening, but traveling is a value of mine. And that's also why I love marketing, because I get, like, of course it depends on different roles and companies and the nature of your job, right? But any company I interview with, I'm like, will I get to travel in this job? And if they say yes, I'm like, great, because that is a value add for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to so many cities now that I probably never would have gone. And my job in marketing is to make sure everybody has fun. So all those trips are fun trips, okay? I went to Michael Jordan's bar in Chicago. Like, like I went to Palm Springs for a week for work, and like all of these things. I tried kangaroo meat in Atlanta, like, and it's like, those are worth it to me. Those are things that actually I value more than money, because for me, it's like an experience. I go, I'm building relationships with my team. I'm building relationship with my partners. That to me is worth more. That experience is so much more important and valuable to me than $5,000 more in base salary. I don't care about that. And again, I think that is one thing that I encourage people before they go out there and start applying, right? I'm like, you should not be applying if you don't even know your salary range.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I spoke to 12 plus women in September last month to help them and coach them through negotiations and and career next steps. And about half of them did not know their current
okay.
market value. And
Wow.
maybe this is me being extra, but I check at least twice a year. Okay. I'm
No,
like,
of
what
course
is
you
my
should.
market value right
Yeah,
now?
what's my
Because,
market value in my industry, right?
yes, exactly.
In my industry, and then even in my country and globally, what are my
Yep.
counterparts earning?
Yep.
Right? My counterparts are earning 80K with the same qualifications and certifications and skills, and I'm earning 60K. I need to either negotiate a pay raise, a promotion, or I leave that company, right?
Exactly.
You know,
And that's the
so
other thing too. People
right.
are so afraid of leaving a company. Um, in the last 6 years, I have worked for 4 different companies, and some hiring recruiters are like, I this is a red flag.
Mhm.
But some other companies are like, oh wow, okay, you jumped here because you got a new role. Okay, I get it. Oh, and you jumped into this industry because you're interested in it. All right, okay, cool. I totally get it. And again, it's a vetting process, right?
Right.
And it's a negotiation process again, because if people make assumptions about you right off the bat, they're not your people. I don't want to work for that company.
Mhm.
But if people take time to, again, like, hear my story, hear what I've achieved and see if it's a fit, then hell yeah, count me in. I
Right.
want to join your team.
Right.
And it's all about knowing yourself, knowing your value, but also knowing what you are willing to walk away from, what you prioritize. Like that other job that offered me 125,000, they
Mhm.
had quarterly bonuses, but the bonuses were based on other people's performance. And for me, it was like just not worth it because I can't control what other people do, you
Right.
know?
Right.
I can control how the company does because I work for the company, right? But also, like, weighing things out. I wouldn't have been able to work remote. And of course, now everybody's working remote. But at the time, that was my decision and elimination process, right? I
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to work from home. I wouldn't have been able to travel. And again, this job, I was supposed to go to Latin America for the first time in my life, but COVID, right?
Right.
But I was supposed to be in Miami this month for work. Like, I've
Yeah.
never been to Miami. Please send me to Miami.
I
you
know.
know but like, these are all the things that you know i I take into account when I negotiate, because it's part of my values, but it's
Yeah.
also what I value in my compensation and
Mm.
prioritize over just salary.
Right.
So, but I want to be mindful of time because
Right.
it is almost 7:30.
Yeah.
I love chatting with you,
I know. I know
obviously.
the conversation has been great. Explore what's possible. When you put a number on the table, ask them, so okay, how much, what more can you do? Do you have something more you can offer, something better? Do your research, know what the industry range is, know what your numbers are, as you're
Yep.
getting into that conversation. Like you said, negotiation is collaboration. It's exploration as well. But you
Yep.
should be confident. You should have done your research and know what works for you and be okay to walk away. Don't sound desperate. Don't beg, and start communicating your value from the start, from the get go.
Yes.
I tell people
And
this from your resume to your LinkedIn to the conversations you have all through the journey.
yep.
Keep dropping all those value bombs. Let them keep seeing how much
Yep.
value is in you, and own your strengths, own your experience. I have 10 years of experience. I have this qualifications, right? I have worked with 5 organizations throughout my career, and I have constantly delivered value. Here are the
Yep.
things I have done. I have help the company increase their revenue. I've helped the company save costs. I've helped the company do whatever. Be able to communicate your value. Trust me, you get paid for the size of the problem you solve.
Yep.
Right? You're solving big
Exactly.
problems. You should be
Yes.
paid big money. You should be paid a bonus. You should be guaranteed that if I do my work, I would get a bonus. And I would get an increase in my salary. I was talking to someone recently, and we're talking about remote, and all that stuff. And I realized the company doesn't even compensate them for working remotely, even if it was given a stipend for internet, for phone. And I'm like, why not? These are the conversations we should be having, guys. These are
Yep.
the conversations you should be having. Why not? Why should I use my personal funds for the company? I should, if I do, I should be reimbursed. Like, all these things are the things you should be asking for as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I, again, like, I've been lucky that my company actually just gave us $1,200 stipend.
Right.
Just, one time, pay off your internet, whatever.
Exactly.
But again, it's like, I negotiated and I knew that was the type of company culture I was walking in
Right.
to, from the beginning, right?
Mm.
And people are like, oh, well, you're lucky because this, that. And it's like, why do we do that? Like, it's not just luck. It's because I had the conversations. It's because I had the numbers. It's because I had the receipts, right? And that's the other thing too, is that as women, I feel like we're trained to know all the answers, right? But we don't. And I also feel like it's very psychological in nature that we feel like we have to have the answers. And the reason why I have stood out in my career so far is because I actually do a lot of questioning. I learn a lot. I'm curious by nature. Those are my values. If I stop learning, a part of me dies inside, like literally. And so for me, it's like, if you're a company that does not question yourself, you're not the company for me, right? And for me, it's like, if you just answer the wrong question, it's going to be the wrong answer.
Right.
So ask the questions. Ask the right questions. I've been in so many organizations where they're solving the wrong problem.
Yeah.
And for example, we had a client where he was trying to grow his company, and he thought that the answer to his problem was getting more customers, right? But then we dug in, we asked the questions, we dug into the numbers, we did more research, and it actually turned out that his problem was not getting customers. His problem was getting the wrong customers because they were leaving him after a year. And so his attrition rate, the problem then, and the actual problem is that people were leaving him. Not that he needed more to hire more people, because then why? You have a leaky bucket, right? Like, you're not going to keep filling that bucket with water if that has a hole in it. Like, that's the wrong problem. Right? But you're never going to get there if you only focus on the answers and not the questions. And so for me, I want more women, especially more minorities, to be comfortable asking questions. We are trained and conditioned so much, like, to have all the answers, but we don't. And that was something that I learned very early on in my career, watching and supporting all these lawyers, where yes, they had answers, but more importantly, they always prepared the questions and making sure that they were the right questions even more. And so if, I don't know who is on this conversation, but if it's one thing that you want to take away or you want to remember, is be a better question asker. And this is something that I encourage with my kid as well. Like, kids always ask, like, why, what is this? What is that? Who is that? Right? And it's like, going back to that theme of explore what is possible, because negotiations is not just a two-way street. It's a broad collaboration, conversation, and exploration, because again, you don't know what's possible until you know, right? All right. Speaking of my kid, it's time for me to bounce.
Thank you so much, Kim. Great conversation. Thank you, AGK, for your comments. And Niam, I hope I got your name right. Um,
Oh, Neve. Love Neve.
Laurie, thank you so much. Roland, thank you so much. Yes, we do make a great team. I love Kim so much. She's amazing. She's the founder of Your Work Inspires, where she helps professionals, and she's passionate about women of color because minority women, because she is one. But reach out to her for salary negotiations and basically career growth strategy. As you can see, she's passionate about this and she lives this, right? This is her true story. Moving from a bachelor's in psychology, moving into tech and negotiating six figures, and year on year, increasing her value, getting compensation and benefits that have made her, five figures in stock, and setting her retirement plan into seven figures by the time she retires. Amazing, amazing professional. Thank you so much, Kim. I love
Thank you
you and I
so.
appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh.
So on that note, is bye from us. If you're in the mastermind, Kim is going to be coming on the mastermind to speak more about negotiation, and you can definitely ask her questions over there.
Yes. 30 days, 15 coaches,
Right?
all masterminded by this
Right?
lovely lady here.
Bye, everyone. Thank you, Kim.
Bye. Thank you so much.